5 children, 5 lawyers, 5 legal requests to erase their father's last name, not to change it, to erase it, as if Brad Pitt had never existed in their lives. And they did it one by one, quietly, with cold determination. Shiloh did it on the very day she turned 18, as if she had been waiting for that moment for years, as if adulthood meant only one thing: freedom to remove him from her identity. Brad Pitt found out through the newspapers. There was no phone call, no letter, just a public notice in the Los Angeles Times, as required by law, announcing that Château Miraval Jolie-Pitt would become Château Miraval Jolie. No hyphen, no Pitt, like erasing an administrative error that had lasted 18 years. But Shiloh wasn't alone. Before her, Zahara had done the same thing at college. Vivian removed his name from her Broadway credits. Maddox had been introducing himself as Jolie for years. Pax erased him from all his social media. Out of 6 children, only one still carried the full surname, Knox, a 16-year-old boy who, according to people close to the family, was the last thread Brad Pitt had left to the fatherhood he once built. This wasn't teenage rebellion. It was a verdict. A decision made with lawyers, with legal filings, with the calm certainty of people who know exactly what they're doing. And behind every erased surname lies a story Hollywood tried to hide for years. A story that began long before the divorce, long before the plane, long before the world realized something was rotting inside the Brangelina paradise. Because what destroyed this family wasn't a single moment. It was an accumulation of looks, of silences, of choices the children absorbed year after year. And when the time came to choose, they chose to erase him completely. Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were the most powerful couple in Hollywood for more than a decade. Brangelina wasn't just a nickname. It was a brand, an industry. He was the heartthrob who evolved from pretty boy idol into a respected actor. She was the rebel-turned-global humanitarian, a UN ambassador, a symbol of modern motherhood. Together, they built a family that seemed engineered for magazine covers. 3 adopted children from Cambodia, Ethiopia, and Vietnam, and 3 biological children born in Namibia and France. A multicultural family flying private jets, living between mansions in Los Angeles, the south of France, and New Orleans. Maddox came first. Angelina adopted him in 2002 when she was still married to Billy Bob Thornton, a Cambodian baby she met while filming Lara Croft. Then came Zahara, a 6-month-old Ethiopian baby adopted in 2005. Then Pax, a 3-year-old boy from Vietnam who joined the family in 2007. In between came Shiloh, their first biological daughter, born in Namibia in 2006. Her birth was so anticipated that the first photos sold for $4 million. Later came the twins, Knox and Vivian, born in Nice in 2008. From the outside, everything sparkled. Cameras caught them on red carpets with all 6 children dressed like royalty. Photographers followed them through airports, Angelina holding one child's hand while Brad carried another. They looked like something out of a UNICEF commercial. Perfect. There's a photo from 2009 that captures those golden years. The entire family at the premiere of Invictus in Cannes. Brad stands in the center, Maddox on his right, Pax on his left. Everyone is smiling, Brad more than anyone. That smile that made millions fall in love with him. That smile that said, "I have everything." For years, that photo hung framed in Brad's office in Los Angeles, placed where he saw it every day. It isn't there anymore. No one knows where it ended up. Some say Brad removed it after the divorce because it hurt too much to look at. Others say one of the children destroyed it during one of the last supervised visits. What's certain is that it disappeared, like everything that once held that family together. But inside that paradise, something was growing in silence. Something the children saw but couldn't yet name. Something that, years later, would explode in the most final way possible. September 2016. A private plane takes off from the south of France toward Los Angeles. On board, the Jolie-Pitt family is returning from Château Miraval, the vineyard where Brad and Angelina had married 2 years earlier. But during that flight, something happened. Something no one has ever described with complete clarity, but something that marked the definitive break. The versions vary. Some say Brad had been drinking. Others say there was an argument about parenting. Others claim Maddox stepped in during a fight between his parents and Brad reacted aggressively. The only confirmed fact is that something happened, something serious enough that 5 days later Angelina filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting full physical custody. Serious enough that the FBI opened an investigation. Brad Pitt was questioned. Child Services interviewed the children, reviewed reports, and ultimately decided not to press charges. Officially, there wasn't enough evidence. But even without criminal charges, the damage was done. From that day on, the children stopped setting foot in their father's home. And even though Brad insisted for years that he wanted to fix things, something had already broken. Something irreparable. Maddox, who was 15 at the time, was the first to sever all ties. On the plane, according to leaked reports, he tried to defend his mother, and Brad lost control. In 2019, 3 years later, Maddox was asked whether his relationship with Brad was over forever. His answer was chillingly calm. Whatever happens, happens. Not I hope it gets better, just whatever happens, happens. As if Brad Pitt no longer existed for him. What no one realized then was that this rupture wasn't only with Maddox, it was with all of them. And what caused it wasn't just one incident on a plane, it was something much deeper, something that had been forming for years. There's a piece of this story very few people know, a detail that only surfaced years later and changes everything. In 2020, 4 years after the divorce, Pax Jolie posted a message on his private Instagram account. It was Father's Day, and instead of congratulating Brad, he wrote something devastating. He used a photo of Brad holding his Oscar for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, smiling with the statue in his hand, surrounded by applause. Beneath that image, Pax wrote, "Happy Father's Day to this world-class asshole. Time and time again, you prove yourself to be a terrible and despicable person. You have no consideration or empathy for your 4 younger children, who tremble in fear in your presence. You have made the lives of those closest to me a constant hell. You can tell yourself and the world whatever you want, but the truth will come out someday." The message was deleted shortly after, but it had already been captured. And even though Pax removed it, the words lingered, because he wasn't speaking only for himself. Who tremble in fear in your presence. That line isn't casual. It isn't dramatic exaggeration from an angry teenager. It's a specific accusation coming from a 16-year-old who had lived with Brad Pitt since he was 3. A child who spent 13 years watching, absorbing, enduring. And if Pax felt that way, if he dared to write it publicly, what were the others feeling? To understand that, you have to go back. Not to the plane, not to the divorce, but further. Back to the years when everything seemed to work. Back to the years when Brad Pitt appeared in interviews talking about how much he loved his children. In 2008, Brad gave an interview to Vanity Fair. He was asked what the best part of being a father was. He went silent for a few seconds, smiled that famous smile and said, "Watching Maddox carry Shiloh when she cries. Watching Zahara teach Pax to read in English. Watching how they protect each other. Those moments are everything." He paused, looked at the camera and added, "I'd do anything to protect that, to keep this family together. It's the only thing that really matters." 17 years later, none of those children call him. None of them visit him. None of them carry his name. And Brad still gives interviews, but he no longer talks about them. He no longer mentions those moments because those moments no longer exist. And the family he swore to protect fell apart in the most final way possible. On May 27, 2024, the day she turned 18, Shiloh hired a lawyer. She didn't wait even an hour after midnight. She filed the legal request to change her name to Shiloh Nouvelle Jolie. She published the mandatory notice in a newspaper and waited for court approval. Brad Pitt found out through the media. According to people close to him, he was upset and painfully aware that he had lost his children. One source said, "The reminders that he's lost his kids aren't easy for Brad. He loves his children and he misses them. But loving and missing them isn't enough." Because Shiloh didn't make that decision impulsively. She hired her own lawyer, paid out of her own pocket, followed every legal step. She was methodical, deliberate, and shortly after she began using a stage name in her work as a choreographer. Jolie. Not even her full name, just Jolie, as if Pitt had never existed at all. And then there's Knox, the only one who still carries the full surname. Knox Léon Jolie-Pitt, Vivienne's twin, the quietest of the six, the most reserved, the one who appears the least in photos, speaks the least in public. To people close to Brad, Knox represents the last flicker of hope. Some say Brad clings to that name as proof that something can still be saved, that maybe when Knox turns 18, he won't do what his siblings did. Others, more realistic, say Knox simply hasn't had the chance yet. Knox is different, more observant, more cautious. In the few photos where he appears, he never smiles. He just watches, as if processing something the others processed years ago. As if he's waiting, as if he knows something no one else does. Some say Knox is the only one who still sees Brad. Short, uncomfortable visits. Conversations that go nowhere. But at least there's contact. At least Brad can still say that one of his children recognizes him as a father. Others say something very different. They say Knox is just waiting, that when July 12, 2026 arrives, the day he turns 18, he'll do exactly what Shiloh did. That he already knows which lawyer to call, which forms to file, that he's just waiting for the calendar to catch up. And they say Brad knows this too, that this is what keeps him awake at night, that Knox is his last hope and his final sentence at the same time. Because if Knox also erases the surname, then it's official, 6 out of 6. An entire family choosing disappearance. There are less than 8 months left to find out, and Brad Pitt is counting the days. But there's something that hasn't been said publicly, something that explains why all 6 children made such drastic choices. And it has to do with what they witnessed for years. Sources close to Angelina have said that Brad was unpredictable, that his drinking made him volatile, that the children never knew which version of him they were going to encounter. Sometimes he was the loving father from the interviews, the one who carried them on red carpets, the one who smiled for the cameras. Other times he was someone else, someone who yelled, someone whose voice could change without warning, someone you had to be careful around. The kids learned to read the signs, to measure the atmosphere. They learned to tell when Brad had been drinking, not because he was drunk, but because his voice slowed, his eyes looked different, the air in the house shifted. They learned when it was safe to talk and when it was better to stay quiet. They learned to move silently through the house, not to make noise, not to provoke. And when Angelina finally decided to leave after the plane incident, they didn't see it as a separation. They saw it as a release, the moment they could finally breathe without being on alert. Brad Pitt doesn't see it that way. According to people in his circle, he believes Angelina turned the kids against him, that she manipulated them, that she told them things she shouldn't have, that she poisoned the relationship. One source said, Brad believes what his children are going through is a direct result of how they were raised. They're old enough now to make their own decisions. From Angelina's side, the response is blunt. Someone close to her said, Brad keeps playing the victim. His fractured relationship with his children is a direct consequence of how he treated them. He needs to take responsibility for his own actions. 2 versions, 2 narratives. And in the middle, 6 children who all made the same choice, to walk away. Here's something very few people know, something that only came out in leaked legal documents during the battle over Château Miraval. In 2024, while Brad and Angelina were fighting over the French vineyard where they married, Angelina submitted documents accusing Brad of abusive behavior, not only on the plane, but over the course of years. The documents described verbal aggression, control, intimidation, moments when Brad lost control in front of the children, moments when he yelled in ways that terrified them, moments when the entire family felt like they were walking on eggshells. The documents also included statements from household employees, people who had witnessed conflicts firsthand, nannies who saw the children hide in their rooms when Brad came home in a bad mood, drivers who heard shouting from inside the house while waiting outside, cleaning staff who found broken objects after fights. Brad denied everything. His lawyers said the accusations were false and designed to damage his reputation. They said Angelina was using the children as weapons in a legal war. They said it was all lies, but the documents existed, signed, submitted to a judge, with names, dates, specific details, and the children read them. They know what happened, and they chose to believe their mother. That's what Brad Pitt can't accept. That no matter how much money he spends on lawyers, no matter how many messages he sends, no matter how many sources close to him speak about his pain, his children have judged him and found him guilty. In July 2020, Brad Pitt sent a message to his children. According to the Daily Mail, it was a desperate attempt to reconnect before the twins' 17th birthday. He wrote that he wanted a second chance, that he loved them, that he was willing to make peace. There was no response. Knox replied, Vivian didn't, Shiloh didn't, Zahara didn't. Pax replied, Maddox didn't. Silence. One source said, Brad is desperate to try one last time. He wants to meet with them, even though he knows the chances are minimal. Another added, there's a bond parents have with their children. Brad doesn't want to give up. He's a proud father and would be happy if they eventually saw him that way. But the reality is simple. The children aren't waiting. The silence of all six is the answer, and that silence is final. Because when a child doesn't respond to their father's message, it's not because they're busy. It's not because they didn't see it. It's because the answer is so obvious it isn't even worth typing. Shiloh didn't answer. Brad hung up without leaving a message. Because what could you possibly say in a voicemail? What words could fix 18 years? The next day, Brad tried again. Same time, same result. Silence. For an entire week, Brad called every night, always around 10 p.m., as if he believed that eventually Shiloh would be curious enough or compassionate enough to pick up. She never did, until the 8th call. The phone rang once, and Shiloh answered. Brad felt a brief rush of relief, a split second of hope. He opened his mouth to speak, to say anything, to begin repairing what couldn't be repaired. But before he could say a single word, Shiloh spoke. Her voice was flat, emotionless, like she was reading from a script. Don't call me again. 3 seconds of silence. Then, click. She hung up. Brad called back immediately. This time the phone didn't even ring. It went straight to voicemail. Shiloh had blocked him. That was the last time Brad Pitt ever heard his daughter's voice. According to the source, that night Brad didn't sleep. He sat on the couch, staring at his phone as if he expected it to ring, as if he believed Shiloh might change her mind. But the phone never rang, and Shiloh never changed her mind. So what really destroyed this family? It wasn't the plane incident. That was just the explosion. The moment Angelina finally said enough. But the damage had already been done. It had been done over years, over a decade of small moments, of accumulated tension, of words spoken and unspoken, of looks, of silences. It was the alcohol, the yelling, the unpredictability, the fear, the constant feeling that you never knew which version of your father was going to walk through the door. The walking on eggshells, measuring every word before speaking, learning to read signals, learning to detect danger before it erupted. It was the fact that their mother had to negotiate with him just to keep the peace. The fact that, according to their siblings, they trembled when he was near. The fact that every family visit felt like a performance for the cameras, and that once the cameras were gone, everything changed. And it was the fact that after all of that, Brad Pitt never took full responsibility. He never said, I was a bad father, I hurt you, and I am deeply sorry. Instead, he said, the divorce really hit me. I need to be more for my kids. But his children don't need him to be more. They need him to admit he was less, that he was destructive, that he caused real harm, harm that can't be erased with good intentions, therapy, or time. And until that happens, there is no way back. And here's the part that only came out a few months ago. The part that explains why this rupture is so final it can't be repaired. In March 2025, Brad gave an interview while promoting his film F1. It was a light interview about racing, stunts, Hollywood. But inevitably, the journalist asked about his children, about the distance, about the erased surnames, and Brad said something that left everyone stunned. Something that confirmed what his children had always known. He said word for word, look, the divorce wasn't as bad as the media made it out to be. Angelina and I have a cordial relationship. And with the kids, well, they're teenagers. All teenagers distance themselves from their parents at some point. It's completely normal. It's part of growing up. That answer was devastating because it denied everything. It denied the pain. It denied the severity. It denied reality. It wasn't that bad. They're teenagers. It's normal. Maddox is 23. Pax is 21. Zahara is 20. Shiloh is 19. They are not teenagers. They are adults, with careers, with lives, with the ability to make informed decisions. And it is not normal for 5 out of 6 children to legally erase their father's surname. It is not normal for none of them to want to see him. It is not normal for all of them to refuse family therapy. This isn't a phase. It isn't rebellion. It's a sentence. Brad said it publicly, on camera, to millions of people. And with that, he confirmed what his children already knew, that he would never understand, never take responsibility, never fully acknowledge the damage, that he would always minimize it, always blame something else, the media, Angelina, adolescence, anything but himself. And that was the final blow. Because after that interview, the children weren't even angry anymore. There was no rage left, only resignation. Only the confirmation that they had made the right choice by walking away. Because their father didn't just hurt them. He didn't even recognize that the hurt existed. And if you don't recognize the damage, you can never repair it. There's a question you might be asking yourself now. Can a family break so badly that it can never be fixed? The answer is yes, absolutely yes. And this is one of those families, because this isn't about a misunderstanding. This isn't about an imperfect father who made small mistakes and is trying to make amends. This is about a father who, according to his own children, caused fear, who made them tremble, who turned their childhood into something they would rather forget, something they chose to erase, literally erase from their identities. And when that happens, there is no therapy that can fix it, no amount of money that can buy it back, no level of fame that can cover it up, no time that can heal it. The damage isn't on the surface, it's deep. It lives in memories that never fade, in emotional scars they will carry for the rest of their lives, in the fact that when they think about their childhood, they don't feel nostalgia, they feel relief that it's over. In 2025, Brad Pitt lives in Los Angeles, in a massive mansion in Los Feliz. It's the same house he once shared with Angelina and the children. The kids' rooms are still there, untouched as if they might return at any moment. Old toys in boxes, clothes that no longer fit, drawings still taped to the walls, like a museum, like a shrine to something that no longer exists. The furniture is the same. The family photos that once filled the walls are gone, but the lighter rectangles where they hung are still visible. Ghosts of a family that isn't there anymore. The house is empty. Empty of the only thing that matters, family. Angelina lives elsewhere in the city, with constant access to all 6 children. Maddox studies in Korea but comes home often. Pax works on artistic projects and lives nearby. Zahara is in college but calls every day. Shiloh choreographs and has dinner with Angelina twice a week. Vivian and Knox are still finishing school, but all of them orbit around their mother. They all return to her. They all call her. They all include her in their lives, and none of them mention Brad. He doesn't appear in family photos. He isn't invited to birthdays. He isn't informed about graduations. In casual conversations, he isn't brought up. It's as if he never existed, as if those years when he was their father were erased from collective memory. And Brad, according to those around him, he still has hope. He still believes that one day his children will change their minds. That when they're older, when they have children of their own, maybe they'll understand. Maybe they'll forgive. Maybe they'll see that he was suffering too. That he was broken too. But there's something he doesn't understand. Forgiveness isn't automatic. It doesn't arrive with time like a wound that heals on its own. Forgiveness is earned, built, deserved. And Brad Pitt hasn't done what it takes to earn it. He sent messages that weren't answered, offered meetings that were rejected, told sources close to him that he's willing, but he's never said the one thing his children need to hear. You're right, I hurt you, and I am deeply sorry. Not the divorce was hard, not teenagers pull away, not it wasn't that bad, but I hurt you, it was me, not Angelina, not the media, not circumstances, me. And I understand if you never forgive me. Brad can't say that. because saying it would mean admitting something he isn't ready to admit. It would mean accepting that he wasn't the victim of manipulation, that he was the one who caused harm. And until he can do that, the children won't come back, because there is no reconciliation without truth, and no truth without responsibility. Maybe as you listen to this, something feels familiar. Maybe you grew up in a home where the atmosphere could change without warning, where you learned to read signals before you learned to read books, where love came with conditions, where you felt you had to earn something that should have been unconditional. Or maybe you're a parent or a grandparent, and this story makes you wonder, what are my children feeling? What do they remember from their childhood? What wounds are they carrying that I don't see? Because that's the most uncomfortable truth of all, that we can believe we're doing fine, that our kids are fine, that our family is fine, while they're counting the days until they can leave, until they can be free, until they can erase our surname from their lives. And we don't realize it until it's too late, until a certified letter arrives, until we see our name being removed from our child's identity. If you recognize any of this, then you understand why Brad Pitt's children chose to erase him. Because when your identity is tied to someone who hurts you, the only way to be free is to cut that bond completely, without looking back. So what's the truth behind this story? The truth is that Brad Pitt lost his children long before they erased his surname. He lost them the day he chose alcohol over them, the day he shouted instead of listening, the day he became someone they needed protection from, instead of someone who protected them. And even if he wants them back now, there is nothing left to recover. Because children aren't lost objects you can find again. They aren't property you can reclaim. They aren't contracts you can renegotiate. They are people, people with memories, people with scars, people who decided their father doesn't deserve a place in their lives. And that decision, as painful as it is for Brad, is valid, it's legitimate, it's final. And now I'll leave you with a question, one that changes everything. One Brad Pitt may be asking himself every night, what happens when Brad Pitt's children have children of their own? When Shiloh has a baby? When Zahara builds her own family? When Maddox becomes a father? Will they give Brad the chance to be a grandfather? Or will they deny him even that? Because if you think this rupture is final, wait for what comes next. The real blow isn't losing your children. The real blow is losing your grandchildren. Knowing your family legacy ends with you. Knowing your surname doesn't disappear in one generation, but in all the ones that follow. That human beings will exist who carry your blood but not your name. Who will grow up without knowing who you are. Who might watch your movies without realizing the man on the screen is their grandfather. That is Brad Pitt's future, becoming a stranger to his own descendants. And Knox turns 18 on July 12, 2026, less than 8 months from now. When that day comes, we'll know. We'll know whether Brad managed to keep at least one child, or whether he lost them all. 6 out of 6. Will Knox be the 6th to erase the surname, or the only one to keep it? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, Brad Pitt is waiting for that day, counting the days, maybe with hope, maybe with terror, probably both. His children stopped waiting years ago. They're no longer waiting for Brad to change. They're no longer waiting for an apology. They're no longer waiting for anything, because they've already decided. They've already chosen, and that choice is final. If this story made you reflect on parenthood, on forgiveness, on the damage that can pass from generation to generation, I invite you to subscribe, because there are more stories like this. Stories the world prefers not to tell. Stories where fame doesn't protect you from pain, where money can't buy love, where families break in ways you never imagined. And if at any point you asked yourself, why does this matter? Why should I care about the family of a Hollywood star? The answer is simple, because this isn't just Brad Pitt's story, it's a mirror. A mirror where you might have seen something of your own family, your own father, your own childhood, or your own children. And maybe, just maybe this video made you think of something you still have time to fix, something you still need to say, an apology you still need to give before it's too late. Because the difference between Brad Pitt and the rest of us isn't money or fame. It's that his failure is public. But private family failures hurt the same, destroy the same, leave the same scars. And remember this, because it's the most important thing of all. Love isn't demanded. It isn't owed. It isn't automatically inherited just because you're a parent. Love is earned, built, protected, day after day, decision after decision. And when you lose it, you can't always get it back. Sometimes all you can do is live with the consequences. Live knowing you had something priceless and destroyed it. Live knowing your children are better off without you. And for Brad Pitt, those consequences are 5 surnames erased, a 6th still pending, and a silence that will never end. A silence louder than any words. A silence that says everything.